Welcome to Flourish-Meant, the podcast on living life as you are meant to, so you can flourish. Welcome, everyone. I have a beautiful woman of God here with me today. Her name is Jasmine Love, and I have just recently met her, and I already love her. She is my sister in Christ, and she is here to talk to us about fearless love. Let me just tell you a little bit about Jasmine. Jasmine took a break from hosting her radio show, Rhythm and Praise, for a little while. And when she did so, she wanted to focus on her new marriage and motherhood. And she realized that what was missing was not just in her life and her marriage, but it was also something other people were missing as well. And that was sex appeal. So she created Creme de la Intimate, an intimate apparel boutique that features sensual nightwear, lingerie, and loungewear, along with a safe space blog and podcast called Bedtime Stories that addresses topics about intimacy and womanhood for women of faith. I love that you are addressing this topic, Jasmine, and thank you for coming on Flourishment today.
Tina, I am so happy to be here and so excited to share my story because I feel that we kind of shy away from it in a lot of instances, but it's something that every marriage, every woman definitely needs.
There are so many reasons why intimacy is a difficult topic for women, and it seems to be even more of a difficult topic for Christian women. Why do you think women shy away from the topic of intimacy when they are Christians?
I feel that because society, because the world, media has portrayed a sexiness and intimacy with this provocative world. And it's something that we as Christians, we don't want to be associated with anything that is not of God. And so sex, because of society and media, it's portrayed as something that they do, the world does, that they engage in. And we're taught to stay away from sex. You're not supposed to do that until you're married. You're not supposed to look sexy. You're supposed to cover your body and things like that. And so because of how culture, society has portrayed sex appeal, and intimacy, it's become taboo. And even though the church teaches us to stay away from that, the Bible, encourages celibacy, holding yourself in marriage. We put a lot of focus on that, but we don't talk about what happens after you get married, that it's okay, that it's actually a God-created thing. And this is how we are supposed to reproduce. And a healthy sex life makes for a great marriage. And so I think that's why Christian women sometimes shy away from it, because a society has portrayed it as something that the Bible did not create it to be.
I agree. And I also think there are some issues of abuse that make women in general very, very reluctant to be feeling safe enough to be intimate with their spouses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be completely transparent, I had to go through a healing process with that, because I have been, sexually assaulted before, and I buried it, Tina. I didn't talk about it. I act like it never even happened. And it was later in life that, I don't know, it just triggered and my emotions went out of control. And I went through that phase where I did not want to be touched. I did not want anyone to think about even getting, down there to my lady parts, because it's like, oh my God, I've been violated. And so it became a feeling or something I didn't want to embrace, because I had been hurt. And I had to go through a spiritual healing process to feel whole again, and that's important, because sometimes people can get in the middle of their marriages and not realize that they're being triggered, and their spouses, they don't understand, why their wife doesn't want to have sex. She's, standoffish and jumpish when it comes to being touched intimately. And it's nothing that they've done. It's because they've been hurt and haven't taken the time out to heal from it.
Hmm. So, as spouses, we need to be sensitive to one another and where our emotions are triggering us to feel that we need to be disconnected instead of connected. Sometimes fear is getting in the way of us becoming more intimate emotionally and physically with our spouses.
Absolutely. And I've learned that for me, when I think of love, I can't put fear in my love. I feel like for me in my life, there is no fear in love. And when I fell in love with my husband, I had to trust him to love me the way that he was designed to. And also trusting myself to love him in the same way and not holding him accountable for things that's happened in my past.
Oh, Jasmine, you just said something so beautiful, trusting him to love you the way he was designed to. That was a really great line. I want to make sure everybody heard that. And that is what you're all about, isn't it? Helping people to love and be loved the way God designed that closeness and intimacy without all of the enemy's attacks and wounds and division getting in the way of that.
Yes, so I recently went through this season where we're newlyweds. Let me put that out there. We've been married 3 years now, so we're still newlyweds in a sense. But I went through this season where I was like, okay, God, I need you to help me learn how to love my husband better. Don't feel like I'm doing a horrible job, but there are some things that I always don't understand. And I want to be his helper. You know how you created Eve to be Adam's perfect helper? How can I be a helper to my husband when he's going through tough seasons and not a hindrance? Because if I make it all about me, I'm going to nag. I'm going to nitpick. Why are you doing this? Why are you acting this way? You're acting different. Your energy is off. And that's going to cause more tension because I'm approaching him with a defense fear of, okay, you're acting different. I don't like it. I'm going to attack it or I'm going to protect myself. I put up this wall. And so now we're fighting each other in our flesh. And, that doesn't lead to anything healthy. And so it's like he's still a human. Even though he's a man and he's all macho and, I love that part of him, he still has emotions. He still goes through ups and downs. And I feel like I'm not helping him in this season, even though he's not talking about it. I'm being a hindrance probably to his growth. So God, teach me how to love my husband. And Tina, it was simple. He said, you love him the way that I love you, without fear of the unknown, with grace, with forgiveness, with patience, with understanding. You love your husband the way that I love you. God says, I am love. I'm the perfect example of love. You exemplify that in your marriage and you watch what happens. And so that's where I've come to this term like fearless love, because God loved me fearlessly. He knew I wasn't going to be perfect. He knew I was going to mess up here and there, but he knew that his love would conquer it all. It's the greatest thing. And so I had to learn how to put myself aside and love my husband, not based on how he loves me, not based on what season we're in, but love him as the man of God that he is. He's God's child too, and so it was a season of putting aside the distractions, put aside the doubts, the fears, the unrealized expectations, the things that may have let you down. Put aside your frustrations and show him love, embrace him. I look at being his wife as a calling. God called me to be his perfect helper. And so I had to focus more on that and not on nitpicking about the things that just get on my nerve.
I love that. You are just really defining love the way all of our love should be. It's based on God's love for us. And
Yeah.
instead, we tend to look at how to relate to one another through the eyes of the world.
Mm.
Self-protection. When
Mhm.
crisis comes and when we're afraid and when we have anxiety or stress, we self-protect. And that is the opposite of love. Hate is actually not the greatest opposer of love. It is fear, because fear
Right.
leads human beings to do the worst things that they will ever do. Isn't that
Mhm.
true?
Absolutely. Fear will lead you to make very irrational decisions. So I feel like if I lived in that place, it wouldn't have led to a good outcome for my family.
So, as we're facing times of crisis and fear and stress going on around us in the world and in our households and in our daily lives, how do we get past that? How do we combat that in order to stay unified in our marriages? Do you have some tips for listeners on how to even begin to do that? Because that's not as easy as it sounds.
For me, it starts with loving myself, self love. I feel that when you are good, when you're in a right place, you're spiritually strong, you're happy, you're taking care of yourself, self love, self care. When that's at an all time high, I feel that everything around you naturally benefits from it. So I start with me, making sure that I can handle, that I can carry the weight, that I'm not carrying so much of other burdens that I can't help carry my spouse's burden. And I always tell women that a healthy sex life, healthy intimacy, it starts with you. You have to feel good first. And you have to feel sexy first. And so take care of you. And once you are there, I feel like that allows you more to put yourself aside in this season so that you could be more available. I know that for my marriage, when we are in a healthy sexual place or intimate place, I don't want to make it all about sex because intimacy comes in so many different ways. When we are in a very good place intimately, then a lot of other things kind of just fall into place. So I start there, make sure you're good. Make sure you're at the feet of God and that you're in a good spiritual place so that your discernment is at an all time high. Make sure you're happy. And that way you have so much more to pour into your marriage, to pour into your spouse, and, be the perfect helper that he needs in that season.
And that self care starts with receiving the love of God and knowing He has your back so you don't
Yeah.
have to feel in that place of self protection.
Yes, absolutely. Trusting God to be who He is for you. And I know a lot of women, and I get it, this depends on what season your marriage is in, but a lot of them are like, what about me? I want him to be there for me. I'm tired of carrying it. And so I think we we have to still remember that God never puts more on us than we can bear, and that He is still God and that He's still going to carry us. And that as we are sowing into our husbands, we are going to reap the harvest that God has for us, that He's never going to leave us lacking or without. So don't make it about you so much. You know how in ministry you pour out so much, God will take care of you as you take care of His people. And I feel like that's the mindset that we have to adopt. It's not always about us. And God will turn it around. When you're in that weak place, your husband prayerfully will give you that same support, but we kind of gotta, humble ourselves and realize that we are serving the kingdom when we are serving our marriages.
That's a really good point. Serving the kingdom as you are serving your marriage, because you are simply imitating Christ when you are laying yourself down and trusting that God is going to be all that you need in your life, and then allowing Him to pour
Absolutely.
through you, because it really, all of our needs are met from God. Sometimes He pours it through us into our spouses, sometimes He does it directly, but we can always trust that our needs are going to be met emotionally and spiritually from God, the original source.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, what are some practices that we can anchor our marriages in to make sure that we are more defended against the attacks of stress and the enemy directly at us trying to divide our marriages?
Making sure that the care of your marriage, how I talked about self care for yourself, the care of your marriage should also be a priority. I've read in a book or a devotion that, a lot of times we say we take care, it's God kids, and then, your marriage get whatever is left over. But we have to turn that around. I've read that it should be God, your marriage, and your kids. Your kids are never going to go lacking. So I think that we have to prioritize the care of our marriages, and prioritizing sex appeal in our marriages as well. When we get ready for our day, we go outside and we do a lot to be ready for our presentation or how we're going to face the world. But we don't always do that with our marriage. We forget about the dating part and the appealing part and to keeping it spicy part. And so, no, I'm not saying go to bed with a full face of makeup, ladies, but take that time, even if it's just a little lip gloss, even if it's just a little spray or perfume to smell good as you're putting on your sensual pajama sets, or if it's that type of night, the lingerie. I say you put in that same effort. We have to stop giving our marriages the last of what we have left and give it top priority effort. Continue covering it in prayer, fast and pray together, and just everything that you did to get in that marriage. Continue doing that throughout the course of the marriage. That's what I'm finding is the most important thing.
That is great wisdom. Whatever you did to get in your marriage, you need to do even more than
Keep
you
it up.
did to get
Yeah.
there, to stay there. So,
Yes.
date nights, praying together, making sure that you build up your husband by taking the moments that it takes to look attractive, like you care that
Mm-hmm.
he is feeling good about himself. That helps him feel that he's important to you when you take a minute to freshen up a little bit. So those are just things that aren't they aren't as shallow as it sounds. It's more about just showing that you care about how your husband feels.
I agree. And we deserve it, Tina. We as women, we carry so much. We wear a lot of roles throughout the day, and we too deserve to look, feel, smell, good at the end of the day, to have those times to decompress and to feel sensual, to feel sexy, to feel like a woman. And I think that when you take that mindset too, that it's for me too, it changes everything. It's helped me a lot after having a baby and being on maternity rest, and everything that happens, the bleeding and the healing, and oh my goodness, everything that happens after having a baby. I felt like I lost my sexy side. I didn't feel sexy again. I didn't feel like a woman again. I felt like, a cow, pumping milk all day, all of that. And so I needed it for myself as well, to remember, like, hold on, I still got it too.
Yeah, just making sure that you believe that God has made you beautiful and that you are beautiful in a relationship that's meant to be close emotionally, spiritually, and physically. We are two made one. And the closer that we are, the more trusting we are with that trifold intimacy, all of those levels of intimacy, the more that we are respecting the design for our marriage to be a fortress against anything that would divide it.
Absolutely. The enemy attacks marriages more than we know. And a lot of times that's the least covered area in our lives. The Christian marriage gives Christianity more vessels. We're birthing more life into this powerful force, and the enemy will do anything to stop that. And it's the thing that God binds together. So he's going to try to attack that. And we have to make sure that our marriages are tight, that we are covering it, and that we stay before God for his direction. Because if that's the least covered thing, it's the easiest thing for the enemy to break up, to cause tension, to get you on two different pages. And so I don't like that. When I feel the enemy attacking my marriage, I'm like, oh, not today. That's not this marriage. That ain't going to happen. And so I feel like we have to take that armor, that full armor of God on when it comes to our marriages as well, fearlessly.
Exactly, because our battle is not against flesh and blood, and the enemy wants us to think that it is. Often he'll want us to think that our battle is against our spouse, and he'll get us to develop resentments and bitterness over little things that become over big things, and bigger things. Out of our insecurities sometimes comes bitterness, and we need to be vigilant about letting go of that every single day before it builds up.
Absolutely. I agree 100%, Tina.
Any other final thoughts that you have for the audience about fearless love and loving your spouse the way that God loves you?
I feel that we've dropped so many gems in this segment. I do want to speak a little bit on what you just said as far as thinking that the battle is with our spouses. It goes back to what we mentioned earlier in the segment about seeing that something is off with our spouse. And instead of going to battle in our prayer closets about it, we go to battle with our spouse about it. And so realizing that that too can be another force, another attack. Our men have so much to prove to the world. They have to be this manly man. And so we have to be intentional as wives to create a safe space for them to show emotions when they're ready, if they want to feel, if they want to pour out. Because if he's already battling spiritually, he doesn't want to come home and then we're battling as well. And it's why we have to keep our eyes on God. God, teach me to see this situation as you see it. How can I be a help? How can I be a spiritual support? Do I need to go and fast and pray on my husband's behalf until he gets out of this route? I think that's so important because we begin to fight and battle with our spouses, and they are not the source of the tension. It's a spiritual fight. And so we have to take on our spiritual support in those areas.
Yes, because the enemy will try to use our spouse to get to us oftentimes, and he'll try to push us apart from one another. And sometimes the spouse doesn't seem like they deserve our support. They've done something to annoy us or irritate us or outright offend us. And we have to learn to let that go and pray for what is under that. Why is he behaving that way? How is the enemy trying to target your spouse to get them away from where God wants them to go? And pray against that. Pray for your spouse, not just for your own self protection.
Absolutely. I think Christian marriages are the most beautiful things in the world because we don't have an easy out. We can't just say, you know what, I'm done with this. When we made a vow before God, we made a vow before God, and we have taken on the assignment, the calling, the responsibility to be in this union. And so we have to fight, and in addition to that, we have to maintain our Christian values. We can't just carry on like we want to. There comes conviction when you're out of character in your marriage. And so I really admire those Christian marriages that, exemplify to the fullest what Christ has created for us. And I think we have to do a better job at showing that Christian marriage doesn't mean boring marriage. It means the best of intimacy. It means the best of romance. It means the best of what God has for us. And that's why a Crib Intimates is so near and dear to my heart, because I want Christian women, to understand that it's okay to love on your husband. God created this. You're not defying anything. You're not being foul. This is your spouse. This is when you're supposed to have sex. So enjoy it and enjoy your marriage. It's a beautiful thing. And I just admire it to the fullest. And that's why I want to continue having these conversations and continue to provide an outlet or source or a place for women to go and feel comfortable when I'm wanting to get more things on how to spice up their marriage.
Thank you so much for providing this topic, for being able to provide these resources and products so that we can continue to fight for the beauty that is intimacy in a Christian marriage. Jasmine, I so appreciate your ministry and your business and all the things that you're doing.
Tina, God bless you. I just continue to keep us covered, continue to pray over us that we're always doing what He wants us to do or needs us to do in this season.
Absolutely. Amen to that. How can people stay more connected with your business, your ministry, and the products that you have to provide through Creme de la Intimates?
So you can definitely check out our website. I would love to connect with you all. Our website is cremeintimates.com. That's spelled CREME, intimates.com. You can reach me via email if you would like at info@cremeintimates.com. And definitely be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to learn about, our podcasts, our blogs, new arrivals, and everything like that. Valentine's Day is coming, so it would be perfect timing. Our Instagram and Facebook is creme.intimates, CREME.intimates. Thank you so much again, Tina. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
I enjoyed having you here, Jasmine, and I hope that all of you listening will check out the products that Jasmine's Creme de la Intimates has to provide for your marriage to stay strong and stay intimate. And I also hope that you come back for the next episode of Flourishment.